Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dorothy and this is Mom Unstuck. On today's video, I'm going to be sharing a very personal experience I have had recently with grief and how I have been coping with grief, and hopefully provide some useful tips that can help you, especially if you're an immigrant who's dealing with the loss of a loved one while you are abroad. Done a bit of research and I have noticed that this is not a topic that is widely talked about. I know we all grieve and we all go through loss of some different form, no matter who you are or where you are from, and I know everyone has their own way of dealing with grief. But I know if you're an immigrant living abroad, thousands and thousands of miles away from your loved one, and it's one of those things that you always dread to hear about: the passing of a loved one, unexpected death of a loved one, or even just to hear about receiving a phone call of a loved one being unwell while you're far away. And I thought it would be important for me to share my personal experience with grief and how I have been coping lately. So not too long ago, I received this news of a loved one that has passed away. And mind you, this was not even a blood relative or someone I'd say I knew very closely, but this was still a person that meant a lot to me and my family, and their passing just came very unexpected to me at the moment. And one of the struggles I find with dealing with grief as an immigrant while abroad is that first of all, there's a huge time difference. Like, I live in Canada and I'm from Kenya, where there's like an 8-hour time difference. So pretty much most times I find that when the news breaks back home, when somebody passes away, we are not normally able to get the news right away, because it will happen while we are asleep here in Canada. And then first thing in the morning when you wake up, doing your morning routine, maybe getting ready for work or getting the kids ready or whatever you're doing in the morning, your morning routine, is when you get the news that a loved one has passed away. And I have found that to be very challenging as a mother and a person who goes to work every day. And recently, when I was hit with the breaking news of a loved one having passed away, I almost lost it. And allow me to mention that this is not the first time that this has happened to me. Back in 2021, during the COVID times, I had my very dear uncle and aunt who were affected by the COVID situation, and they ended up in hospital, and unfortunately only one of them made it out of the hospital. So I ended up losing a very, very dear uncle to me. He was pretty much like a father to me. He raised me. He was my dad's eldest brother, and that was the first time as long while I've been away or while I've been abroad that I had to deal with grief from such a distance. And you can imagine, at that time we couldn't even travel. My kids were way younger. We were all unvaccinated, and at that time it was a requirement. If you had to travel, you had to be vaccinated. And so another challenge that most immigrants face when you receive this news, it is so sudden. You are not expecting it, especially in a situation where the person died suddenly. So you probably had not prepared that you would need to travel suddenly or take emergency leave from work. And not every workplace here is accommodating. And even if you are able to get the time off work, which I highly recommend, I'll get to that in a bit, it is not always affordable to book a ticket right on the go and travel and make it back home for the funeral of your loved one. So those are some of the challenges I faced in 2021, and unfortunately I ended up missing my beloved uncle's funeral. And trust me, now that we have live streaming, and you can live stream the funeral on usually the family will send you like a YouTube link. I felt like, okay, that's okay that I'm able to see that, but it was not the same because I was not there to give myself the closure, to be there with my loved ones who we had all been affected by this great loss in our family. So instead of that video, me watching the live stream being helpful to me, it actually ended up just causing so much pain because I could not get. So what ended up happening after many weeks of struggling at work, and a mistake I made was that I never took time off work, and I highly recommend, especially on the day that you receive that news, I recommend not going to work if at all possible. If you cannot miss work, maybe or if you get the news while you're already at work, you can request to leave work early and just be honest. Talk to your employer or your manager, supervisor about the sad news that you've lost a loved one, and take the time off. Take a couple days off if at all possible. I highly recommend that, because that's one of the biggest mistakes I made, especially in 2021 when I received the news of my uncle's passing, first thing in the morning while I was getting ready for work. I still went to work, but I ended up getting to work and falling apart and breaking down, and it was not the best way, and definitely not the best place for me to break down at work. I almost had a panic attack. It was actually not good at all. So I obviously ended up leaving work early, and because of the nature of my work, it was very difficult for people to see me in that situation, in that condition. They had never seen me like that. I was hysterical. I couldn't speak. I couldn't function. I wasn't even sure if I could drive myself home, and so those are some of the challenges I experienced. So one thing I can recommend, if I can say this is my number one tip, is to take time off work if at all possible. If the news happens, if you get the news while you're already at work, try to take the time off and leave the job place, and request some time off if possible, whether paid or unpaid. It should be okay. It should be okay, because trust me, you will need that time just even to accept and to even deal with the pain and the heartbreak. And trust me, the distance makes the pain 10 times worse. I have been dealing with a lot of pain, unexplainable pain. Another thing I'd recommend is to find somebody to talk to, get some friends. If you're in a community, maybe you're Kenyan, connect with your Kenyan community. If you've lost a family member, if you're okay with people coming to visit you, let them visit you. If you're okay to receive phone calls, receive phone calls. I found that to be very helpful, and I really appreciate the people who reached out to me during those difficult times. So what I ended up doing, because I just could not cope. This was a very, very close uncle to me. It was a person actually I considered my dad. He had taken care of me and raised me, just like my father. So I ended up planning a trip to travel back to Kenya, and it was such a quick trip, so I didn't take the time to plan well or even to have all the finances. I ended up booking the flights for me and my children. I had to pack my children, take them with me, and it ended up being a very expensive trip. But looking back, that was the only way I could find closure, was for me traveling and me going to be with my loved one, and seeing his wife who had survived. And I'll tell you this trip meant so much to me, because I tell you what, about 7 to 9 months later, his wife was who survived also passed away. So I look back and I wonder how I could have coped with the loss of those two people while being far away and unable to travel and unable to see them. So that's another challenge that most immigrants will face when you lose a loved one abroad. It's the finances. So this news always comes sudden. You don't always have the finances prepared, and booking flights, like right now, if you could just look up how much a flight is back to your country, if you're from Africa, for example, you're talking about $4,000, $3,500 minimum, just for you to go, just as one person. Imagine if you had needed to take your dependents, your children, so that's the kind of cost that you would be looking at if you cannot if you needed to travel right away. And I'm so grateful that now we're in the age of technology where we are able to live stream the funerals, and if that's the only way you are able to go through the grieving process, hey, that's fine too. I actually recommend taking a day off, well, for you to watch the funeral while it's being live streamed. Mourn with your loved ones, because another thing I experienced as I was watching, it really hurt me to see my loved ones in pain. I felt it even more and wished I could be there to mourn with them, to celebrate the life of our loved one together with them. So I'd recommend that as well. Take as much time as you need to deal with the situation, because I had a couple. So in this recent loss I have experienced a few weeks ago in 2024, a few interesting things happened that day that I got the news. First of all, I had no other way to express it. I was literally on my way out the door heading to work when I got the news. So I got in my car, and of course I'm in denial. I'm like, how can this happen? Is this even real? I'm driving to work, and I made it just right outside the doorstep of my workplace, and I broke down. I didn't know what to do. So I turned on my camera and I recorded myself. And some people might judge and wonder why I did that, but at that moment I did not know what else to do. And because I had experienced falling apart and breaking down in the workplace in 2021, like I shared, I didn't want that to happen again, and I knew that's exactly what was going to happen again. So I preferred that I release myself, allow myself to cry as much as I needed to in my car, record myself, and then calm myself down before I got into work. And I'll attach that video right here. So that's what I did, and that actually helped me, but it was also ended up being a very, very difficult day at work, and that's how it's been lately. I'm still coping with that loss. I'm still going through it, and I have found it, honestly, it has not gotten easier. The loss of a loved one while you're abroad, it will never be easier. You have a lot of questions. Unless you go back now and try to find things out in hindsight to understand what really happened to this person. Were they sick? Did they die suddenly? Did they even don't know they were dying? And what I found helpful is to allow myself to grieve. And a few interesting things that happened actually when I got the recent news. So I continued with my day at work, and I found myself very disoriented. I could not believe myself. One day I was going out of the store, and I accidentally got into someone else's vehicle, thinking that it's my own vehicle. Yes, that's how bad That's how bad I had been affected by the grief without even realizing it. And that's why I continue to insist that it is important that you take as much time as possible from work if you can. You don't want to be even driving. I don't recommend driving. I don't recommend over exhausting yourself with a lot of work. Of course, if you're a parent like me, you still have to take care of your children, you still have to take care of your family, but set aside some time for yourself to grieve and to mourn. Go through the memories, try and remember the wonderful memories. Another useful tip I'd provide is to think of your loved one in the present. So bring up good memories about them. If you have pictures, if you have memories, if they were on social media, go look out, check their social media, just especially if you hadn't seen them in a long time, if you've been away, just go back and remember the wonderful memories that you shared together. So that's something I found very, very useful. So yeah, think of your loved one in the present tense, and if they were born again, I'll share this as a Christian. Be encouraged. You will see them again. That's what the Bible tells us. Yeah, so look to God for comfort. Ask the Holy Spirit to lead and guide you through these difficult moments. Please be aware that there's wrong ways to grieve. You don't want to get caught up or get yourself into a rabbit hole of depression and anxiety and lots of sadness that can affect your health or your loved ones or your work, So I'd also encourage you, another tip I'd like to share is to encourage you to carry on with your daily responsibilities. If you're living abroad, I don't think you even have much of a choice. If you have a family, you have to take care of your children. Do not neglect yourself. Do not let yourself get into that dark place where you are hopeless and almost getting depressed. So I'd also encourage you to accept help. That's another tip. Accept help as much as possible. Allow people to reach out. Answer a phone call or two if people are reaching out to you, if people offer to take your kids out, cook a meal for you, come spend some time with you if you're able to and strong enough. Kindly, I highly recommend that you accept help, just to take one day at a time. During this moment, I have allowed myself to be happy because like I said, it's okay to go back and remember memories that you had with this loved one. So I've allowed myself also to cry. And also another tip and something to look out for: expect grief to hit you unexpectedly. 1 minute you'll be okay, another minute you'll be crying a river because find yourself still dealing with accepting that your loved one is gone. You will not see them again in this lifetime. So this is going to be a journey. I read a quote from the late Queen Elizabeth that says that grief is the price we pay for love. So don't beat yourself too hard. If you find yourself excessively emotional, it's okay to let yourself get there. Just make sure to set some boundaries and don't let yourself be overtaken by grief. I'd also highly recommend grief counseling. I personally have not done it yet, but it's something I'm considering doing, and I would highly recommend, even if it's from a spiritual authority or seek professional help if need be. I highly recommend that, and have an outlet. Maybe this is the last thing I'm going to say. Have an outlet. Like I said, for me, what I did at that moment when I just received the news, I needed an outlet. I needed somebody to talk to, and At that time, I had no one to talk to because I was on my way to work. It was me alone in my car with my thoughts and my emotions. So I brought out my camera and I did something that I usually consider odd or even silly, and recorded myself crying, because that's the only way I felt I could release that pain, that anger and frustration I felt right at that moment. So have an outlet. If it's someone you need to talk to somebody. Be involved in your community, depending on the country that you're in. If you're abroad,